Ladies and gentlemen, this is day 5 of Industry Samurai Conference and Awards. And this is a special day for us because we have the honor of having Ms. Akiko Sugita, Consul-General of Japan with us. A very warm welcome to you, Ms. Sugita, to this forum.
Thank you.
She's going to share with us some thoughts and insights on the occasion. Before that, let me introduce her background to you. Prior to the current role, Ms. Sugita has held the roles of Counselor, Embassy of Japan in Singapore, and Secretary General, Foreign Press Center, Japan, Principal Deputy Director at Public Diplomacy Strategy Division, Minister Secretariat, Minister of Foreign Affairs in Japan. She has studied humanities, specializing in history from Williams College, the USA, and from Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, Japan, specializing in Spanish. I invite now Ms. Sugita to share her thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anand Pandey, editor of Dynamic Manufacturing India. Distinguished guests, participants, thank you very much for having me here at the Industry Samurai Award 2021, hosted by Dynamic Manufacturing India. Today, I'd like to talk about the Japan-India relations with a focus on the cooperation in manufacturing industry. Japan's investment in India stands 5th largest at $35.4 billion USD from the year 2000 to 2021. The bilateral trade between Japan and India amounts to $13.4 billion USD from April 2020 to February 2021, out of which export from Japan to India is 9.5, and that from India to Japan is 3.9, both in US billion dollars. More than 100 Japanese investors have funded 240 Indian startups and have made 360 deals between the year 2000 and May 2021. The number of Japanese companies grew at CAGR 7% from 2010 to 2020, reaching to the total number of 1,455 companies with 4,948 operational establishments throughout India as of October 2020. During the COVID-19 crisis, global companies learned that a great risk arises from heavily depending on one single country for production. There is an increasing awareness among Japanese companies to move their overseas manufacturing bases from China and other vulnerable countries, or to choose a +1 strategy to diversify and strengthen their supply chains. In the survey conducted in the year 2017, India has been ranked as one of the most attractive destinations for investment by Japanese manufacturing companies. There are several reasons for choosing India as a destination. First, India has a big and growing market. Second, India has rich and talented human resources. Japanese companies are in dire need for IT talents of India. Third, India is a global outsourcing hub. Fourth, India's software technologies have great competitive advantages. And fifth, world global manufacturing giants have R&D centers in India. I believe there is a great potential for India and Japan to explore further collaborations to enhance competitiveness of Indian manufacturing industry. Prime Minister Modi launched Make in India for the development of the manufacturing industry in India. The world standard Japanese manufacturing companies are aiming at establishing a new business model for collaboration between Japan's hardware technologies and Indian software technologies. The outcome will be infinite. Japan's METI and India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry launched Japan-India Industrial Competitiveness Partnership in 2019 in order to enhance competitive strategy of industries in India. Discussions are underway to build industrial parks and promote direct investment, reduce logistics cost, and facilitating the license procedures. If I may introduce the ongoing efforts made by the government of Karnataka, a Japan Industrial Township was established about 80 kilometers away from Bengaluru. We have two useful dialogue platforms between the Karnataka government and the Japanese business community in Bengaluru. The main purpose of this dialogue platform is how to solve issues pertaining to Japanese companies, such as road connectivity, water and energy supply, and acquisition of land, among others. Both sides should continue this dialogue and make proposals from each other to find good solutions. Because those companies that have already established their manufacturing bases in India will act as a model case for those companies who will aspire to come to India in the future. Lastly, next year marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of Japan-India diplomatic relations. I hope that this milestone will create great opportunities to strengthen bilateral relations between Japan and India to deepen mutual understanding, and that will bring about people-to-people exchange in not only business and tourism sectors, but also academic and cultural platforms. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you once again for this opportunity to address to you all. Thank you very much, and Dhanyavada Garu.
Thank you, Ms. Sugita, for your kind words of encouragement and inspiration about the Indo-Japanese relations and to people in our industry, in our country. Ms. Sugita, I want to share with you before I ask you a couple of questions, is that the very name of these awards and this conference, as you would have noticed, is Industry Samurai. And that is a name that comes from your country, from your culture. It is inspired by the culture of resilience and courage that is so reminiscent of your country. I'll very quickly share with you the genesis of this name, how it occurred to us. Last year, when the pandemic hit us in India, we were all at sea. We didn't know what to do, who to turn to, and everybody was anxious. So we interviewed about 17 people, industry leaders in India in manufacturing. And then when it came to term the whole event something, the special book that was coming out, I was given the task of doing it. And I thought that, I'm a big fan of the Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa. So his picture, Seven Samurai, came to my mind. And I thought that you've interviewed 17 people, and what better name to give to this whole initiative than Samurai, because that is the best symbol of culture and resilience when we think of it. So we called it Industry Samurai Awards. So thank you so much for that inspiration on behalf of our industry. Now I'll move to the first question that also relates to the culture of resilience and courage. See, the last 2 years have been particularly tough for the global manufacturing industry, including, I'm sure, that of Japan. And your country is known, and your industry is known to have braved natural crises like earthquakes and other natural disasters time and again, and emerged strongly from them. So what are the lessons in courage and resilience that you would like to share with people in our industry, with manufacturers, with business people and professionals, in how to emerge strongly from challenging times?
Okay, thank you very much, Anand. Japan has suffered from many natural disasters, as you said, such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunami, and typhoons. In the recent history, around 10 years ago in 2011, the Great East Japan earthquake hit northeast region of Japan with a magnitude of 9.0. The massive tsunami washed away 600 kilometers long coastal areas of northeast Japan and left 500 square kilometers of land underwater. It resulted in 20,000 casualties. destroyed 400,000 houses, and stopped 270 railroads, and left 24,000 hectares of agricultural land underwater. Japan's GDP of the second quarter in 2011 plunged to minus 2.1%. The government of Japan estimated the total loss was approximately $210 billion US dollars. The triple disaster of earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster accident cut off the supply chains from northeast region of Japan to the world. There were major auto parts and electronic product parts industry in the region. Those companies heavily relying on their particular product supply had to find other suppliers very quickly. So through the Great East Japan earthquake, just like the coronavirus pandemic, I think we learned a lesson that manufacturing industry should diversify the supply chains and make the supply chains more resilient and efficient to secure the production. I think that is the wisdom we have to share with the world.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sugita. The second question from me is, what, in your perspective, from your standpoint, are the biggest strengths of the Indian manufacturing industry for global competitiveness?
All right, Anand, as I mentioned in my speech, I believe the Indian manufacturing industry has competitive advantages in the 5 areas. If I may just repeat, one is the growing big market, and second is a rich and talented human resources, and the third is strength as a global outsourcing hub, and fourth is strength of software technologies, and the fifth is the presence of R&D centers of the global manufacturing giants in India. Having lived in Bengaluru for 18 months, I personally believe the real strength of India also lies in the quality of Indian people. Many people I have met in Bengaluru hold open and flexible views and think very efficiently. They also demonstrate very skillful social and professional manners of handling meetings and making presentations, and at the same time, making other people at ease. This is a set of great features required for global leaders in business, especially anywhere in the world.
Thank you so much for those warm words of kindness and friendship. That they are really, really inspiring and encouraging for us. Ms. Sugita, my last question to round up this discussion is something that comes from a book that you had written in Japanese, which was titled International Manners and Rules for Business Persons. This is a very interesting premise. And I would like to ask you about the idea that made you write this book, and the several references to cultural connotations that come up in this book, particularly in relation to India and Japan.
Thank you, Anand, for asking a question about a book I wrote about 15 years ago, actually. As I was working for the Foreign Service, and I was particularly interested in the area of protocol, which is a rule of diplomatic relations when you handle, for example, receiving state guests, official guests to one country, or having a ceremony to entertain other countries' dignitaries. I thought that we should disseminate this information to the business people in Japan also, because there are lessons we can share with business world as well. So this is a set of standard rules that apply to any kind of countries which handle diplomatic relations with other countries. At the same time, I was also interested in cultural differences in social manners. Since I have lived in the United States, Singapore, and India, I noticed several differences compared to that of Japanese businessmen's customs. In Japan, business people usually have meishi or name cards. And you may have noticed that rather than looking at each other, they just like to hand over the meishi or business card to the partners and then recognize what title you have and what company you are. And after that, they can initiate a conversation. I think it is related to the Japanese idea of seniority. In Japan, who is senior to others is kind of important. So by looking at the designation and the company's names, they can guess which is above and which is senior, who is senior and who is junior, things like that. So they tend to focus on the titles and the company names too much. In global community, I don't think it is always true. And most Indian people just start their conversations without necessarily exchanging meishi or business cards. Of course, there are occasions that I receive their business cards right away, but it's more that you have a very relaxing manner to initiate discussion, and you may want to know what this person is thinking about in particular agenda, rather than carrying the titles or designations. So that is a subtle difference. Another difference I noticed is Indian people's this habit of acknowledging positively. This can mean in Japan, no, because it's like, when we acknowledge, we tend to bow, not in the sideways. So when I came to India, I noticed that you tend to do this sideways. And now I naturally adopted your custom of doing this when I acknowledge what you say. So it is just a little cultural difference.
Yes, absolutely. That was very interesting insight. The famous Indian head bob. This confuses a lot of cultures, a lot of people abroad, and I'm glad that you adapted to this. This can be fun also when you mean something between a yes and a no, and you just say this, that means no, and say yes. So this is our way of figuring things out as we go along. Thank you so much. These are very interesting insights and great lessons, Ms. Sugita, in cultural differences, in things that are common between our cultures. Thank you for graciously accepting our invitation to this occasion. As you've seen, this is called Industry Samurai. And what could be more fitting to this conference, what could be more auspicious for this conference than your presence and your encouraging words. Thank you so much. Have a brilliant day ahead. Thank you for coming to our forum.
Thank you very much, Anand. I really enjoyed participating in your Samurai Award ceremony.
Thank you.